We want to become somehow a living thing that is nevertheless has the character of machinery and objectification. It's a very complex image in the human mind, with Christ at one end of the spectrum and the universal medicine of longevity at the other end of the spectrum, and then all these adumbrations and resonances, the philosopher's stone, the grail, the gift difficult to obtain, the magical object, the talking stick, the jeweled, self-revealing basketballs of the DMT state. In the 53rd fragment of Heraclitus, he says, the aeon is a child at play with colored balls in eternity. And, this makes no sense until you smoke DMT, and then you find yourself in the presence of the aeon, the archon of the world age. It's a child at play with colored balls in some kind of a virtual reality. Yeah. Yeah, well, I don't know why exactly it is. It certainly seems true that men have a deeper relationship to drugs than women. I think that's generally true. Even hard drugs. Women don't seem as interested in drugs or as potentially addicted to drugs. Maybe there's a deeper survival instinct there. Women are constantly burying the dead, caring for the sick, giving birth, helping with miscarriages. They may be more rock-bottom realists. Well, the guys are harping 100,000-line oral epics and stuff like that. I think, I quoted this statistic in a different context, but that in 1800 the average American woman gave birth 13 times. Giving birth, especially in a world without anesthetic, is a pretty psychedelic and boundary-dissolving and ego-erasing and whoop-de-doo kind of experience. I think women may, in traditional societies, not care to contextualize psychedelics simply because they have enough on their hands. I don't know the gender, there's a lot about gender stuff I'm interested in, but I don't understand. My friend Brenda Laurel studies girls and why they seem to have some difficulty naturally acclimating to the internet, and how boy and girl, male-female mathematical abilities seem to differ, although I think that's changing. I think the latest data is that women are pulling even with men in mathematical graduate schools, at least in some places. I don't know, men are, and maybe this is cultural or maybe this is biological, but men are maybe more boundary defined than women. Like women seem, and again, you make these statements, you don't know whether you're making a biological statement or a cultural statement, but women seem more tolerant of bisexual and homosexual behavior. They're sort of comfortable with all that, where male sexual encounters are always defined to some degree by competitiveness or, the hidden shadow of competition. Now, what was the other part of your question? Oh, about the tone. Well, this is a very specific question, but in the story that's told in The Invisible Landscape, Dennis seemed, as he went around the bend, to have insights into these, like, shamanic techniques that were real techniques, and that he could not only tell you what they were, he could tell you how they worked. And one of the things he insisted upon was that you could use your voice to transduce energy into your own body and other people's bodies, which this is no news. Acoustical signals are a good way to transduce energy across space. But that you could actually use it almost like a acoustical laser or something like that, and that you could interfere with the normal chemistry of these drug molecules and make them enter into bonding situations that they would normally not be have affinity for the bond. You do this by making them superconductive. You make them superconductive by stilling their molecular motion. We tend to think of absolute zero as a temperature, but in fact, when an atom is still, from a physicist's point of view, it's at absolute zero. At absolute zero, the normal rules of bonding are canceled, and these things become like sticky. They'll bond to anything. And so he said you could use voice to form a relationship of the geometric incident of the angle of attack of the incoming acoustical wave as it encountered the molecular matrix, that it would cause some of these molecules to become superconducting, and that then they would bond permanently into the bond site of activity, and that instead of having a transient psychedelic trip, you would lock this stuff in. And he envisioned the harmine molecule, which has these two Mickey Mouse-like ears of benzene rings hanging off the pentexyl structure of the center. He visualized them like vibrating antennae. And he said, you will land these molecules into the nuclear cleft of the DNA and then bond them in with this acoustically generated sound, and then forever after, the person that we do this to will have a standing waveform holographic image in their imagination of the sum total of space and time. It was like he said, you'll get this image of the universe that will be sort of like your interface to the big internet. The internet where every star is a website. And the sound that you were to make to cause this to happen was the electrons, an octave, or a harmonic of the electron spin resonance of the harmine molecule in your system. And it is true that a significant percentage of the people who take ayahuasca report a loud hum. A hum. It was a hum. And so he felt that by imitating these molecular hums and tuning through them, that you only, according to him, you only had to make the right sound for a few milliseconds. So the doing the scales was an effort to hit all possible sounds, knowing that when you got it right for just a few milliseconds, it would lock in. And so these sounds sounded somewhat like this. And then he somehow was able to keep going, and then he would start over and do this, and he called this the strum. And it would not have been worth talking about 32 years later or whatever, except that it seemed to work. It caused him to go spectacularly bananas, and me to go arguably nearly as spectacularly bananas. And in a way, that trip we've never come down from. I mean, I'm not saying that as I sit here I am in contact with the eschaton or the spinning violet torus of hyperdimensionally stored holographic information. But on the other hand, I feel a very strange, weird connection to those times, probably because he put all kinds of strange suggestions into my mind. I mean, at one point he said, we can never leave this place. We'll never leave this place. He said, but we have to fashion an image and send it forth. We have to send forth holographic images of ourselves. And I've often wondered, am I still down there, rising at dawn to walk the grassy pasture loaded out of my skull? And, this is all some sort of... It's all a dream, actually.